So let's say we want to run a sample using the Headspace sampler. The first thing we need to do is make sure that this tank that's connected to the Headspace sampler with this via this tubing is turned on. This contains nitrogen. Nitrogen is what's used to fill the sample vials. And once the samples have heated and come to a certain pressure, then the sampling happens from that vial. So that this nitrogen produces that pressure inside the vial. This sort of forces the sample into the transfer line. Okay, so we've got our sample in position 1. So we've put our samples in, we made sure that their gas tanks are on, and now we're going to set up a method. So in order to do that, let's actually load a Headspace method. Here's our Headspace default, HS default, and click OK. It's nice to work from a default sometimes. So now now that our method is loaded, let's edit this method. Just go through here and make sure that everything will work for us. I want to click OK. This is the default, that's fine. Okay, so the sample inlet now is the GC, and the injection source is the Headspace. That's correct. So we want to also make sure that use mass spec is checked, and click OK. So now we have a new window that we don't see if we aren't running Headspace. Okay, so we have to make sure that our temperatures are all set. We have our oven, which is what the sample is moved into in order to heat up the sample. The sample then goes to the loop, and then from the loop it goes to the transfer line. And you'll notice that, you can see this, the temperatures are increasing as we go from oven to loop to transfer line. And that makes sure that we don't get any condensation when we move from one area to the other, getting our sample into the GC. So I'm going to leave this as is. For the times, now this is something that may depend on your sample. This might be something to play with. But right now we have a 5-minute vial equilibration. So that's how long the vial will be inside the oven and equilibrating. I would say that that's the shortest you would want to go. The injection duration is 1 minute, and then the GC cycle time is 18 minutes. This is something that we might have to come back to and adjust, this GC cycle time. So what the GC cycle time does is it allows for the GC to do its temperature ramp as we normally do in a GC or GCMS experiment. And then there's some additional time tacked on to allow for the GC oven to come back to room temperature. If this GC cycle time is too short, the samples don't run properly. In fact, I think they don't run at all. So we're going to go through these parameters. We're going to look at our GC parameters. And once we know how long the GC temperature ramp is going to take, we're going to add maybe 4 minutes onto that and make sure that that's our GC cycle time. Okay, so the vial size is the 20 milliliter vial. And we're going to we're going to flow the nitrogen until we reach a certain pressure. The fill flow is 50 milliliters per minute, and it fills to 7 psi. There are other methods, and we could think about why these would be useful. But for now, okay, carrier is controlled by the GC, skip that. Okay, so we're going to do 1 extraction per vial. And so as soon as we extract the sample from the vial, the GC is going to start running. If we have a leak detected in our vial, I've set this sequence to continue. Sometimes we do get a leak, and other options include skipping or aborting and stopping the whole sequence. Stopping the whole sequence is pretty disruptive, obviously, so you could skip if you'd like, but I've just set it to continue. And if you were doing something where you were looking for publishable results, you wouldn't want to continue. You would want to skip. Okay, and the rest of this is fine. So let's click OK. And now here's our GC parameters. So we don't need to worry about the front injector on the ALS. The inlet's 250 degrees Celsius, that's good. That's above the transfer line temperature, that's what we're looking for. So here's our oven parameters. We're starting at 50 degrees Celsius and ramping at 30 degrees Celsius per minute until we reach 250 degrees Celsius. And our runtime, this is the important factor here, our runtime is 8.67 minutes. So we need to make sure that our GC cycle time is 4 minutes longer than this runtime. That allows for the GC oven to go from the 250 degrees Celsius back down to the 50 degrees Celsius. So I would basically set the GC cycle time at 13 minutes. So we can go back, right? It was set at 18 minutes. We can go back and adjust that so that we have less downtime between samples, if this is going to be the ramp that we're using. And for this it is. Okay. Again, a mass spec, if we're looking for something in particular, we can do single ion monitoring. If we don't know what we're looking for, we can do a scan. I'm going to not overwrite the default method, and I'm going to name this something else. Okay. And then setting up a sequence is just like we do if we weren't using Headspace, if we're using the ALS. So we can edit our sequence, make sure that we select the right method. And then give the sample a name. Okay, so I said I wanted to go back and adjust my method though. So you can click on any of these little icons here. This button is for the Headspace. So I said we could adjust this down to 13 minutes. Let's do that. So that should be, whoops, I clicked on the wrong button. And then we're going to want to resave our method. Method, save method. Okay. And now we can run our sequence. I want to save this to a different location. Okay, saving it in my method folder. All right, so I clicked run sequence. I know that this is, the screen looks a little flashy because of the refresh rate here, but what I want to do is click on status. We're still waiting for something to get ready. Okay, now it's green. So this sequence in progress, and it's got a run button. Okay, we're good. So right now the vial is moving into the correct position. There's our temperatures. Okay, this is what I want, vial status. And right now you can see that it is equilibrating, and it has a countdown timer for that. So if you're not sure what the instrument's doing, click status until you get to vial status, and you can keep an eye on what's happening here. If you have multiple vials, it'll number them. So this is vial number 1 in position 1. So we had 2, 3, 4, etc. That's how you can keep track of what's going on. Because there's a lot of just simply waiting with Headspace, and so you can kind of get lost of where you are. So there's a good tip for you. And so now we'll wait for our sample to run.